Welcome to the Q&A Live. We are here to ask and answer questions about sibling dynamics, about spirited children, about strategies for maintaining adult friendships, and many, many more. And if you are joining me here live, make sure to say hi. And if you're watching in the comments, then leave me a comment. Let me know where you are in the world and how old your children are so that I can make sure to cater these to be relevant to you and your family. All right. In April, I have made a commitment to answer every question that I get. We are organizing them. I am coming on live and I'm going through them rapid fire so that no question goes unanswered. And that is because I have opened the doors to my membership, the studio. Doors are closing tomorrow. So this is your very last chance to join us in there for an entire year. And this price will not be coming back. If you feel that you could do with some leadership training, that you could create more structure in your home, a better mindset, feel more empowered, feel more strengthened, feel supported, have a place to go to for trusted answers, have an incredible supportive community online without any toxicity or drama. If you feel like you could do more decluttering and reorganizing and designing your home to feel really high vibe, or you yourself need a bit of a glow up, or your family library, your family storytelling, your family history, your family time together around the table or around the campfire or out in nature. What I've just said are all things that we offer inside the studio, projects that you take on, accountability that we offer you, structure that we give to you. So you can stop reading all those books and scrolling all the pins and, making all the mood boards and feel actually focused on getting results for your family. That's my job. That's what I do. We have incredible members in there and I warmly invite you in. Now, the reason I'm doing these coaching sessions live for everyone and for free is because I want you to test drive my coaching style. If you like the way that I answer questions, if you find it helpful, refreshing, useful, if it changes your attitude a little bit, if you get a more confidence or a pep in your step, then the studio is for you. Make sure to check it out at highfam.com/studio. Now let's get into it. All right, Jelky writes, "Hi Avital, I have a question about the sibling dynamic. I have two children, 5 and 2.5 years old. They're actually great at independent play thanks to a lot of your tips and tricks that we have implemented. By the way, if you too want to get your child playing independently, just go to reclaimplay.com/course, grab the course. It's quick, it's easy, and within 3 weeks, I can pretty much guarantee that your child will be playing for 3 hours a day. I can't 100% guarantee it, but that is what we typically see." Okay. As a result, however, my husband and I often don't see what's happened during a fight. Most often, one of the children comes running up to us with tears, saying something like, "My brother or sister hit me." Do you still respond in the same way that you outlined in your previous videos by separating them? Our strategy right now is that we ask the other sibling whether this truly happened. And if they confess, we just ask them to apologize. I don't really want to punish them when they are being honest about the hitting because I'm afraid that that will just teach them to lie. Good instincts there. She also writes, "My two children yell a lot. They don't call each other names and they aren't mean, but they often just yell, ah, to show their frustration with their sibling. But the biggest problem is that it starts with a yell of frustration and quickly becomes a yelling match where they're trying to out yell each other. I'm not really sure what to do with that either. Thanks for all your wonderful insights. They always help us so much." All right. Well, Yelki, I am so glad that these help you. Let's get into sibling dynamics. And as the mother of 5, this is something that is very, very, near and dear to my heart, something that I deal with quite a lot. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that I think it's really important to adopt the right mindset for ourselves as parents when it comes to coaching our children through struggle and through conflict. What we don't want to be is the judge and jury. We don't want to be litigating. We don't want to be lawyering up. We don't want to be agitating and creating this space of who said what, who started what, who did what. Do I believe you or do I believe them? We don't want to be pitting children against each other. So one of the key things that I would offer is to always coach the mindset of each child according to their experience of the situation. So if, for example, one child comes up to me and says, "Oh, my sibling hit me," right? What I don't want to get stuck in is, did they really hit you? Do I believe you? Are you making this up? Did you hit them first? How did this come about? Because when I haven't seen it and I wasn't there, and I don't want to encourage this type of constant looping of tattletaling and looping mom in and, those types of things. What I do want to encourage is helping them to get the tools to react well to a situation. What should I do if my sibling hits me? Okay. So, for example, one of the things that you might want to consider if your sibling hits you is, okay, I need to move away, right? I need to protect myself. I don't want to hit them back because that will just escalate. I want to move away, give them space, take a time out, basically, right? So one of the things I teach my child, oh, your sibling's hitting you, you don't have to play with them. Someone who's hitting you, you don't have to be in them. You can move away. You must not escalate and be violent back to them, right? I mean, I do teach my kids to defend themselves if they're like, out in the street and someone hits them. But if a sibling is getting into a quarrel with them and they're both escalating and agitating the situation, chances are that they're both, lending to the conflict. And I would rather that they learn to disengage. Why? Because I'm a big believer in the power of the break. When we take a break from our anger, when we take a break in a fight with our husband, when we take a break before writing a nasty email to our boss, when we take a break because we've been getting into a spat with our sibling, we give our prefrontal cortex time to come back online. Our amygdala stops firing. We can relieve ourselves from the fight or flight mode, and we are more likely to be able to see clearly, right? To problem solve. So the first thing I encourage is, okay, so move away from them. If they're getting violent, you can say, I won't let you hit me. You can move away. You can go play in your room. You can go play somewhere else. You don't have to play with them, right? The second thing I actually encourage is self-reflection. Where did I go wrong? Is it possible that I hit them first? Is it possible that I snatched something? Is it possible that I provoked them somehow? Maybe it's a good idea for me to consider what I've done to contribute and to co-create this situation. Because generally, kids don't just come up out of nowhere and hit each other. Generally, there's a mutual agitation and there's an escalation of conflict. And it's important that each child learns to question themselves and their role in it. What could I have done differently? What should I have done? What will help when someone hits you and what won't help when someone hits you? So for example, what won't help is screaming or hitting them back, right? What will help is taking a moment, moving aside, being like, I don't want to play with you if you're hitting me. And then thinking, okay, I know I grabbed your toy, I'm sorry about that. And you hit me and I hope you're sorry about that, right? Kind of understanding what were the sequence of events that led me to get hit, right? In normal cases, it's going to be something that I've done. Okay. And then also being able to set a boundary. Like I said, that might be taking space. That might be saying, ow, you're hitting me. I'm not playing with you. Right. Etc. Now, the child who does the hitting also gets coached. Right. We also coach that child and we say, hitting is never okay. I'm not going to let you hit. If you hit like that, your sibling won't want to play with you. That is an unacceptable way of showing your anger or showing your frustration. Let's talk about what you can do. You can say, please give it to me. You can say, I want to take turns. You can say, I'm really mad at you right now, right? There's a lot of things you can do that don't include physical violence, and we want to teach them that, okay? So I would say you separate them when they're actually in the midst of a violence towards each other. You have to actually physically separate them and stop, right? But with the situation of them coming and telling, right, after the fact, that is the time when you want to coach their mindset and teach them real tools and set real boundaries. I see you can't calm down right now. Go and calm down in a timeout, in a time in, whatever, that type of thing. Okay. Basic says, hi, Avital, I've been moving away from gentle parenting movement too. However, I don't agree with the notion that my parents didn't take any courses, but I turned out okay. Fair enough. You don't have to agree with that notion. And that is not a particular notion that I hold near and dear to my heart. I think it's just important to acknowledge the things that were good about our parents. And I don't know how your parents parented you, so I can't really reflect on that. You say, we've seen all sorts of issues arise from strictness. Adults with so much emotional baggage, attachment issues mean. I agree with you. The truth is that authoritarian parenting is not good for kids. The only comment I've already made on this, and this is just what I see in research, is that permissive parenting actually results in even worse results than authoritarian parenting. But the fact is that we don't want either of them. We don't want authoritarian and we don't want permissive. What we want is warm, clear leadership, right? It's what's called authoritative in parenting research. And it's hard to do. It's hard to strike that balance, right? But if you're only nurturing, you get chaos. And if you're only demanding, you get rebellion. You need warm, clear leadership, right? I'm with you. I mean what I said. I'm following through on boundaries. I'm being clear about rules. I'm loving. I'm warm. I'm bonded. I'm securely attached. We have a lot of fun together. We have a friendship together. And I'm a clear leader with clear boundaries. Does that clear things up for you, Basic? Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm talking about? I think the goal is to hit that balance of high support and high expectations. So the idea is not, well, I was spanked as a child and I turned out okay. Although there's a kernel of truth to that for people to understand that we're adaptive and we're strong, and people can rise above their struggles, and we don't need to dig into our history and constantly agitate for childhood trauma and make all sorts of excuses about why it's hard for us to function well as adults. We can move past it. We can overcome it. I speak as someone who's been through some serious trauma and had clinical PTSD. It's not the worst thing that happens. You overcome. Right? We are resilient creatures. We are anti-fragile. We are able to handle a lot of stress, including difficult parenting. Yeah, it leaves the mark, but it's up to us as adults to overcome that and move forward. But I'm not by any means suggesting that that's the goal. The goal, the best parenting style, which has been really well researched since the 70s, is a parenting style that offers high expectations, which includes rules, follow through, consequence, clarity, right? Really standards, setting high standards for manners, for, hard work, for values, all of that kind of stuff. And offers high support. So warmth, connection, attachment, bonding, fun together, a joint identity, a sense of belonging, meaningful rites and rituals and routines. We want to really merge those two. And the fact is that most of us did not see that done at home. That is hard to do. And that's why I teach it inside of the studio. That's why we build these habits piece by piece by piece, sitting around the table as a family without a screen, getting out in nature, having a meaningful, connected bedtime routine, feeling confident and warm and fun and not resentful as a mom, right? All of these things are things that I teach because they don't come naturally to us. The idea is not just, do what your parents did, even if they were, emotionally unavailable or aggressive or overly controlling. No, but also we've got to forgive our parents. We've got to move on. We've got to be the adults that we need to be for our kids, not somehow just give up or swing the pendulum so far in the other direction that, okay, fine, now we're not authoritarian, but now we're permissive. And that's bad for kids too. All right, Basic. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions to that or any pushback, and I will move on to the next part of Yalki's question, which is about the yelling. Look, yelling is annoying and it's unpleasant, and I think it's appropriate for a parent to warmly and firmly say, whoa, that's too loud. Calm it down. It's, we're not yelling. I don't want you to yell. Please talk in normal voices. Talk like this. And it's okay to say, if you can't stop yelling, I need to take you to separate rooms because you're giving me a headache, right? Kids have to learn to be respectful of their surroundings, respectful of your sensory input, not driving you crazy, not hurting your ears. And they do also need to learn that talking in normal tones is what's going to get them what they want, is what's going to garner them favor and create a sense of mutual respect and fun in the household, right? So that's really, really important, I think, to reflect that back to them. And it doesn't have to be in any major big show of control or punishment, but just, it's too loud. Talk quieter, please, right? Firmly. No yelling. Let's talk in quiet voices, please. You're hurting my ears, right? Just feel free to just say what you need in a really clear, loving way. Basic says, or that it would permanently shape our relationship when he's older. Can you expand on that? Because I'm not sure what you mean by that. Permanently shape your relationship with who? And is there a question that you want me to answer there? With pleasure. Just help me with a little bit more information. Okay, let's move on to chart 1873, who says, please can I also second the follow-up question of the previous poster about raising a spirited child? My middle child, I have 3 boys, 10, 7, and 2, is highly emotionally intelligent. He has great social skills. He can read others very well, but he struggles with impulsive behavior. He's very emotionally reactive and can be very defiant, incredibly rude, and even physically aggressive. I think we need more or different parenting tools. Any advice? Many thanks in advance. Okay, so chart, yes, I have lots of advice. I don't think I'll be able to outline all of it right here, but let's get into this a little bit. So the first thing I want to caution is against using labels like spirited child. I've used them myself in the past. I certainly have kids that would answer that label, but I just want to caution you that it doesn't box you in, that it doesn't make you limit your child's abilities in your own mind, right? Like be like, oh, he can't because he's spirited, or, oh, let him off the hook. He's just spirited, so he's going to be overreactive. He's going to be over emotional. I can tell you that I was definitely what would today be considered a spirited child. I had explosive and violent tantrums. I was very sensitive. I was easily offended. I was emotionally reactive. And I can tell you that I overcame those things, that through character development, through hard work, through really, learning tools, CBT style tools of mindset, coaching myself and have others coach me and learn from people and reading books and practicing, I was able to minimize a lot of that reactive, emotional, impulsive behavior and generate more emotional mastery. Now, no one's perfect. I'm going to work on this my whole life. I still have moments, but I want to just say that sometimes having a label like that makes us limit our child's ability in our mind. He's 7. Okay. So he doesn't need a label, right? He just needs you to coach him and help him and reflect back to him the skills that he needs to develop and practice with him and hold those high expectations and those boundaries that he will master this. He's not going to be emotionally volatile his whole life. He will not be allowed to be physically aggressive. He is going to be coached to be more cooperative and less defiant. Okay, so you're going to help him with that impulsive behavior. I want you to get into the mindset of, oh, he just needs a little bit more help in this way. He's wonderful with his great social skills. He's amazing with reading others. He's amazing with, emotional reflective conversations, and all of that is great. He's probably potentially very good at repair and on even taking accountability and understanding his part in things if you give him a chance. But he needs more help in these areas, and that's fine, right? That's just called being a kid. Every kid needs to be rounded out and helped with the things that don't come naturally to them, right? Every kid has some label you could attach to them. And what we really need is just to help them with those behaviors. So that's the first thing, is not to attach and lock in to a label, not to ADHD, not to neurodivergence, not to spirited, not to sensory, not to middle child, not to only child, not to any label that you think of as some kind of minimization of that child, that they somehow are going to have a much harder time with this. I don't know. Things aren't linear. There are quantum leaps when it comes to childhood development. There are surprises. Kids are ever changing. There are phases. Kids grow out of things. Speaking as someone who has grown out of lots of things myself and who has 5 children who have grown out of lots of things, just from my own personal experience, I can tell you that those labels aren't helpful and they're not necessarily always true. Sometimes it's suddenly the very shy, relaxed child that suddenly has a very big emotional reaction. Okay, so let's just put it to one side for a moment so that we can really focus on what your child needs right now. So now let's talk about these things, okay? He's impulsive behavior, emotionally reactive, very defiant, incredibly rude, and even physically aggressive. And what I'm hearing from these things is that he needs leadership, okay? He needs boundaries. He really needs you to stop treating his feelings like emergencies and to start setting structure and follow through. Okay. So the first thing is what I just said, stop treating feelings like emergencies. Okay. His big emotions are normal for many 7-year-olds. Okay. They are not urgent problems that you have to fix. You can stay calm as possible, right? Set boundaries and let the feelings ride without letting them steer the ship. Do not let him get his way or get let off the hook or get extra attention just because of emotions. Okay. Emotions come and go. So you're feeling that. Okay. It's normal to feel frustrated. It's normal to feel mad. I get that you feel sad. That's okay. Those feelings will pass. And I want you to adopt the "this too shall pass" mindset, right? Where you can stay calm and you can say, you can be upset. We're still moving forward. All right. We're still moving forward with dinner. We're still getting in the car right now. We're still going to have to go to the class, even though you're upset. Right. So feelings aren't emergencies. That's the first thing. The second thing is that behavior follows structure. Okay. In modern day parenting, we often think behavior follows speeches. We have to negotiate. We have to over explain. We have to do lots of words. We have to do validation and reflection and justification and explanation and all this stuff. But kids don't change because you explained it perfectly. They change because you consistently lead with clear expectations and consequences. It's the type of thing we learn on our bodies, right? With our feet, with our hands, with our faces, not with our heads, not with our thinking heads. Okay. So I would rather that you establish clear systems, like this is our bedtime routine. We do it every single day, no matter what. This is what we have to do in the morning. right? This is what happens when someone throws things in our house. This is what happens when someone has a tantrum about screen time in our house. This is what we do on Sunday mornings. This is what we do on Friday nights, right? Systems trump yelling every single time. Lean on your systems, kind of outsource all of the analysis, all of the decision fatigue to a rule, to a system, to a routine, to a ritual, to a tradition, so that you can just follow through without constantly repeating yourself. You're like, oh, you did this? The consequence is that. Okay. In my home, for example, if you whine or cry about screen time, there isn't any. It's just not, it kind of, it made it null and void. Okay. It dequalified you for screen time. I won't put up with it. It's a no. And so he needs to get used to the systems. By the way, as I've said, inside the studio, we set up systems, right? We set up a meal plan. We set up a chore system for us and our family to work as a team. We set up a system for getting out in nature more, a bedtime routine where we all get fantastic sleep, right? All sorts of systems that really help kids that are emotionally volatile to see that their emotions don't influence their life one way or another. And that's a really important message. It's countercultural, it's counterintuitive, but the idea is for them to learn emotional mastery, where their emotions can come and go, and we still do the thing anyway. Think about the best research we have into things like depression. What we know is that when people are overcome with negative emotions, they actually need their systems and their behaviors to hold them in place so that they feel grounded and centered and capable despite the emotions. You do it not because you feel it, you do it despite your feelings one way or another. So for example, getting up in the morning, having a shower, getting dressed, going to work. That's the type of thing that can hold you in place and can see you through a bout of depression, because the behavior actually helps you to feel better. It actually helps you to get your feelings on board. So I want you to remember that feelings follow actions. He needs to make good choices and do the right thing despite his volatile emotions so that he can develop emotional mastery. And I speak as someone who has certainly been through this herself. Okay. And then finally, I want you to remember what we said at the top of this session, which is that we need to be authoritative parents. Okay. Peaceful, loving, calm, firm, very confident leaders, right? So you need connection with your child. Connection opens doors. You need the bonds. You need the special quality time. You need the eye connection, the eye contact, the touch, the love, the fun, the jokes. But you also need boundaries. Okay. You need both. If you're only nurturing, as I said, you get chaos. And if you're only demanding, you get rebellion. You need warm, clear leadership, right? The idea that you're going to keep going, keep on keeping on, that you're going to expect certain behaviors from him. You're going to restate the house rules. You're going to follow through with consequences. And you're going to train him in good choices and in good behavior. Okay, chat, I hope that makes sense. Let's just release the spirited label for a moment and just focus on helping him build better behaviors. You're rude. I'm going to reflect back to you. That was rude. I expect you to talk politely. Please rephrase that. Okay. You're being physically aggressive. I'm going to block you and say, no, you cannot use your hands to solve this problem. Go and calm yourself down in your room and come back when you're ready to talk. You're being very defiant. I'm going to say, look, I need your cooperation on this. If I'm not getting your cooperation on this, it's going to stop me from being able to do other things that you want to do. Right? Impulsive behavior. I'm going to say, whoa, let's take a moment to think about this. That's not a very good decision. You can make amends. You can repair. Right? Take each piece of behavior, each mindset, coach it, set a boundary for it, follow through on it. Help him to overcome through better habits, through better systems, through better norms in the household, right? So that you are flailing less. And finally, I just want to tell you that I want to remind you that this is normal, that he's okay. He's going to be great. He just needs some parenting. This is the tough work of parenting. That's what he needs. He doesn't need anything, out of the ordinary. He doesn't need you to feel guilty or worried. He doesn't need a diagnosis. He doesn't need a big change. He needs some systems stirred up, some follow through, some stability, and primarily your leadership. And you've got this. You can do this. All right. Brilliant. Okay. Basic says, the question was, how would I know if my child is resilient enough? What if they can't bounce back from me shouting at them? What if my relationship gets permanently damaged when they are older. Okay, I really relate to this fear. We all have that worry as parents that we're somehow damaging our children, that we're somehow severing our bond with them, or creating an ambivalent or avoidant attachment system with them. I understand. But I want to encourage you to develop a little bit more trust in yourself, to lean on your intuition a little bit more, to feel more confident as a parent. The reason I talk about parents in generations past is because, let's say, our parents, for all the mistakes they may have made, they didn't have this, crippling self-doubt, right? This crippling worry, this constant self-questioning, hesitancy, worry. Am I doing it wrong? Am I going to damage them? And that's because, in a way, ignorance is bliss, right? They didn't read about childhood traumas and, the effects of damaging parenting in the same way that we know about it today, because it's everywhere. And that's one thing we can take from them, is just bolstering up your confidence a little bit, calming yourself down. And the reason I say this is your kids do not need a parent who is constantly worried that they are falling short, that they are missing something, that they are messing them up, that they are damaging them, because that in and of itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If my kid gets the message throughout childhood that I'm timid, unsure, afraid of my own shadow, sees them as a victim of me, like as if I've somehow, hurt them in an irreparable way, because we all hurt them a little bit, right? We hurt their feelings, we yell, we let them down somehow. Okay. But I don't think it's good for kids to feel like they are a victim of their parents when their parents are loving, benevolent individuals, right? There are children who are victims of their parents, but my guess is that if you're here on this session and asking yourself those questions, then it isn't you, right? And so here's the thing. We have incredible brain plasticity till the end of our lives, and the potential for repair is always there. Okay. It may not be the same when they're in their 80s, but if your child is still a child, if they're a tween, if they're a teen, even if they're a young adult, there's the option and the possibility of reconnecting, of taking accountability, of taking responsibility, of apologizing, and of moving on. People are resilient, and you need to trust that and believe that and build that up in your child. You build that up in small ways, like they can wait for something. They can hear a no. They can handle a challenge. They can deal with disappointment and frustration, right? We need to build up that skill of resilience in small children, in childhood and tweens and teens. And then our child gets the message, oh, my parent believes in me. My parent knows that I'm strong. My parent knows that our bond is strong and unbreakable. My parent knows that I feel a sense of belonging and connection, and I feel very supported, and I feel very loved. And by the way, you can actually ask your child this. I regularly, every few months or every few weeks, ask my child, hey, do you feel supported? Am I being a good parent to you? Is there something you need me to know? Did I miss something? And inevitably their main complaint is, I would like a bit more screen time, please. Right. But it's not, I don't feel like you're in my corner, or I don't feel like you listen to me, or I don't feel close to you, or I don't feel like I trust you. No, I know that they do feel those things. And I know that me knowing that creates an even more deep sense of trust and security. Right. I'm not fumbling. I'm not, hesitant. I'm not constantly self-doubting. That's better for the family. Even if I do make mistakes, I know that I can make amends. I do make mistakes. I've totally made mistakes. I can make amends. I can apologize. I can help them repair. I know how the brain works and how we overcome, traumas, struggles, difficulties, challenges. I know that I can help them make chronological sense of it. I know that I can help them to position it in their brain in the correct way and to assign correct accountability. I know that I can help them to build up a sense of self as someone who can overcome, as someone who is resilient, as someone who doesn't break under pressure or under strain, right? So I don't want you to think, oh, my child can't bounce back from me shouting at them. I want you to think, of course they can. I'm going to repair this. This is perfectly normal. This happens in almost every household. It's not ideal. I don't want it, but it happened. And I can talk to my child and say, you know what? That wasn't cool that I shouted. I'm really sorry I lost my cool. I'm sure that was very scary for you. I love you so much. You're safe with me. I'm going to do my best not to shout in the future. But even if I do, I want you to know that that's not okay. I take accountability for it, and I will find a better way of communicating with you. Okay? So your relationship won't be permanently damaged. Children are endlessly forgiving, are endlessly driven to have a good relationship with their parent, right? That's biology. That's evolution. That's just survival. They want to feel close and good with you. They don't want distance. So I want you to trust yourself and see that resilience in front of your eyes. Like, do the repair and you'll watch it happen. They'll be like, okay, thanks. And they'll be close to you. They'll hug you. They'll trust you with their secrets. They'll share things with you. They'll be close physically with you. You'll see that they love and adore you and 100% forgive your shortcomings. Your next question is, when do you think, or what do you think about extrinsic motivations like charts, stickers, and rewards? Okay, so I'm not a huge fan. I barely use any of these things in my parenting because I really prefer for processes to be more intrinsically motivated, to just make sense, to be more habitualized. And I prefer to just get my child on side with something and to explain it and to establish good routines and habits. However, I also think that it's a tool. It's a behavioral tool. We are mammals. We do respond to behavioral rewards and punishments. And I don't think we should throw it out altogether. There are times and places when it can be really helpful. For example, when you're trying to overcome a specific behavior pattern that has kind of like an end date, right? Like staying in your bed at night or, doing your chore in the morning or whatever it is. I think, I once got a really good piece of advice from one of the kind of principals at a group my kids went to, at a school my kids went to. And they used external motivations like stickers and rewards and prizes. And I said to him, why are you using external motivations? There's a lot of research to show that lowers intrinsic motivation. And he said, look, we prefer intrinsic motivation. Of course we do. It would be great if kids just wanted to learn this stuff for themselves, wanted to do the right thing, wanted to be kind and helpful by themselves. But we can't leave it up to chance. If that doesn't come from an intrinsic motivation, then we have to throw everything we have at it. We have to make sure that we're establishing these good behaviors and these life skills and this learning, whether or not they feel intrinsically motivated. And for that reason, I would say keep it in your toolbox, use it sparingly, but appropriately. And don't let your child develop poor behaviors, misbehave, have terrible attitudes, not do the things they have to do because you are, timid and you don't want to give them this extrinsic motivation. It's another tool. And sometimes we need to use it. Some kids are going to respond amazingly to it. And I mean, it has a lot of research that sticker charts, etc., can be really good for behavior modification in, targeted ways for specific things. So it's not the thing that you always use, but here and there, yeah, let's apply it. Let's use it. No problem. I've used sticker charts here and there. And it's actually sometimes quite hard for us, the adult, to stick to them, right? To make them, first of all, you got to make them make sense. They've got to be doable. They've got to be measurable. They've got to be time sensitive. You've got to make it not too much about candy or money or that kind of thing, but more about a celebration at the end. You did it, you overcame, great. But look at us adults, okay? I'll just explain it like this. Some people drive carefully because they're intrinsically motivated to drive carefully. They don't want to speed, they don't want to take risks, they don't want to harm themselves or others, and they understand the rules. It makes sense to them. They're going to drive safely. But we all know someone who that's not enough for. If other people aren't looking, then they are going to be reckless. And they need extrinsic motivation. And that's why there are things like speed cameras and police and fines, right? And taking people's licenses away because they need the extrinsic motivation. And we don't leave it up to chance that, everyone's just going to make the right choice about driving all the time. No, we are realistic about society and about human psychology. And we understand that not everybody is just intrinsically motivated to do the right thing. We all need a little bit of extrinsic motivators, such as rewards and punishments, to sometimes keep us in line. And I think that's true for our children too. Focus the primary of your parenting on intrinsic, on why something's a good thing. Why should you learn to read? Why should you, learn to ride your bike or learn to swim or help with household chores or not hit your brother? Like, there are reasons, real reasons, just like driving safely, why you should do these things. But if that's not enough for you, hon, I'm still not letting you off the hook. Fine. Then you'll get something taken away or you'll get something given to you for the right choice, because I'm going to make sure that you make the right choice by hook or by crook, by intrinsic or extrinsic. Basic, does that make sense? Does that answer your question? You say your parenting journey and ideas are so practical and amazing, Avital. Thank you so very much. It is such a pleasure to answer your questions here live, and I hope I see you inside the studio. All right, let's keep going with a question from Tiger Not Woods, who says, yeah, but it depends, because there is a part of childhood where you should get to enjoy things. So are we talking about Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, and now we're liars when we're just trying to have something fun for the kids who or are we talking about the real stuff? Not to mention, it depends, because if you're talking about that or problems in most cases, children should not be burdened with adult problems. Children need security no matter how much everything is falling apart. They shouldn't even notice. They should feel everything is okay. All right. So Tiger Not Woods is referring to my idea that we should never lie to children. I think I have a policy. My own personal policy is to always tell the truth to my children. I might tell a very simplified version of the truth. I might tell only, the portion of the truth that they can handle and they can hear right now. But I do have a policy that I don't lie to my children. And I actually tell them my policy is that I don't lie to you. Why? Because I think that trust is a very difficult thing to build and a very easy thing to break. And I know that I want to be a trusted source of information for my children. I want them to know that they can come to me with difficult questions about sex or about money or about death or about politics or about, trouble with friends or trouble in school or the law or anything. And that they will get straight talk from me, that they can depend on me to tell them the truth and give them good information. So I want to be a trusted figure in their life. And I know that in order to be a trusted figure in their life, I have to tell them the truth. Okay. So Tiger Not Woods is saying, yeah, but what about Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy? Now, I take a little bit of a hard line on this. I think there's a lot of childhood magic and fun and games that you can play like Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy without lying to your child. You don't have to make out like it's real. I think it's perfectly fine to say, like, we imagine this and this, and let's believe that there is a fairy, and let's believe children are endlessly not susceptible, but like suggestible and happy to dive into imaginary play and imaginary stories and suspend their disbelief. But I don't want them to have the experience, and I know a lot of people have, which is the shock when they discover that their parents actually lied about these things all of those years and that it isn't true. I think if a child is old enough to look you in the eye and say, yeah, but is it real? Does he really come down the chimney? For you to say, no, darling, he's not real. He's a real story that we tell. He's a real game that we play. It's a really fun fantasy that we imagine. And I don't think that takes away from the experience. I think it actually helps the experience, because I think it's very stressful and confusing to a young child to be told things that are supernatural, that even the adults don't believe. I mean, it's not like you're telling them you believe in something supernatural like God and you really believe it and you're really sharing it. You're telling them to believe in something that you don't believe in, that you think is not true, is just a story. And I think that creates a lack of trust. So I think we should tell them the truth about what we believe, especially if they ask. Okay. You want to just pretend Santa Claus is real for a while and they enjoy it when they're 2, 3, 4. And then when they're 5, they're like, but is it really real? To me, at that point, you've got to say, no, darling. He's not really real. And that's because your relationship of trust with your child is more important than the experience of believing in Santa Claus. Now, I happen to believe that childhood is full of magic because of reality, not because of tooth fairies. Like my children have known that there's not a real tooth fairy from the get-go, but they still love the game and they still believe in, enjoying stories and enjoying games and enjoying imagination, just like we enjoy movies and books without thinking that they're real. It doesn't take away from it at all, but repeating and doubling down on a lie for the sake of a game, I think diminishes you as a trustworthy individual. I know it's a hard line. I know a lot of people like what I'm saying, but that's what I feel. I think you should just be very, very honest with your child. Now to the second part of your question, which is even more important. You say, if you're talking about problems that children should not be burdened with, like adult problems, they need security no matter how much everything is falling apart. They shouldn't even notice and they should feel everything is okay. Here, I have to strongly disagree with you. I do not buy into the idea that childhood should be this protective bubble where they don't know what's going on. Yes, we need to protect child's psyches. We need to make sure that they are not crushed by the stress and the struggle. But I think hiding the reality from them, telling them white lies, sneaking or not sharing with them because you think that that's how protective is usually going to backfire, because usually they sense the stress in the air. They can see, say there's a divorce going on. They can see that something's going wrong between mom and dad. They can feel that things are very stressful and difficult. And it would actually make it easier for them to have a simplified, appropriate, right, developmentally appropriate explanation that is honest and that is true, to give them a framework to work with and to understand their reality. I'll give you an example from my own life. I live in Israel. We've been living through a war. Many people were kidnapped and taken hostage. And there are posters of those hostages in the street. People that we know were taken hostage and executed. Our friends have lost their husbands, their sons, their daughters in this war. And I have very young children who have to run into shelters from missile attacks, right? Or who have to see people that they love and know well, going off to war to defend them. Now, should I just hide that for them? Should I just pretend that everything's okay? Should I just tell them, no, kids didn't really get kidnapped. Kids didn't really get killed? I don't think so. I think I need to tell them in honest, straightforward, calm terms what has happened, what is real. And then I need to coach them with a mindset of how they can handle that and how they can overcome it and how they can still be strong and be resilient and be capable and live a good life and make good choices and be okay. All right. So I very much disagree that we should hide things from children. I don't think they need the full blown, all the gory details. They certainly don't. They certainly don't need graphic visuals or graphic stories, right? They need something very, very specific, very tailored to them, very helpful for them, very honest to them, to help them feel safe, feel secure, feel like there's an adult in the room. There is leadership, there are answers, but yes, there's something very difficult and very stressful going on. If you have someone in your family with a disease, if a grandparent dies, if a pet dies even, right? If there's a hurricane coming, if there's a divorce in the family, if there's financial downturn, if you're living through a war, these are the types of things you have to know how to coach your child through, not lie to your child about. They need to know that, yes, there is a death or there is a war or there is a disease. It's hard, it's tragic, it's painful, but we can handle it. This is what life is made up of, I'm afraid. And it's only in weird societies, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic societies, where children are perceived to be these precious, protected, minorities that can't come in contact with regular day-to-day realities and stresses. Because throughout history, life and death were much more intertwined. People saw things with their eyes. People experienced things more firsthand. Children weren't as protected, for better or for worse. And only in our modern day culture do we think, oh, the kids should just be in this amazing magical bubble of, of gifts and of Disney World and of fantasy and of fun, instead of, no, childhood is about developing the skills you'll need for adulthood. In childhood, you need to develop good social skills, resilience, great mindsets, a can-do attitude, a lot of life skills like cooking, chores, reading, all sorts of things that you need to be able to do. Now is the time that I actually train you to be a great adult. So what you need to see is, watch me. I'm, living through a war in my case. Watch me how I grieve when I hear terrible news that someone I know was killed. Watch me how I, try to comfort the people around me or be a support system to the people who have lost, limbs, for example. Watch me how I manage my anxieties and my fears and I still go about my day-to-day activities. And let's talk about it, because that's what people have to do. Okay, it just sheltering them from it gives them no life skills. It robs them of their inheritance, which is mindset, which is values, which is capacity, which is a culture, right? Here's how we do things around here. Here's how we handle pain around here. Here's how we handle grief or sorrow or fear. Okay, there are things you can do with fear. It's normal for a 4-year-old to be afraid of the dark. It's normal for a 7-year-old to be afraid of robbers. But instead of just saying, no, there are no robbers, there are robbers, actually. And it's normal to be afraid of them. And let's talk about what you could do. Let's talk about how we handle it. Yep, we're afraid. We feel the feelings. We do it anyway. We call the police. We call my parent, whatever, right? So sorry for that strong disagreement, but I really think that you would be robbing your child of their trust in you if you lied about difficult things, and also robbing them of opportunities to learn to manage difficult things. Children who grow up with a challenge, say children who grow up with a sibling with severe special needs, severe disabilities, right? I know lots of kids like that. They can't be sheltered from it. No one can lie to them about it. No one can hide it from them. No one can, make them have this perfect Disney World childhood. They've got someone who's struggling and suffering right in front of their very eyes, and they're watching their parents worry over them, fret over them, spend lots of money and lots of time on them, etc., etc. Those are the kids who develop empathy, perspective taking, the ability to wait, skills, social skills, a lot of understanding, a lot of independence, right? So would we wish that on anyone? No, we wouldn't wish it on anyone. I wouldn't wish it on any child around the world to live through what my children have lived through in the last year and a half, right? The missile attacks or the losses or the fear or that kind of, I wouldn't wish it on them. But if that happens, there's silver linings. There's a good side to it. And the good side to it is that you learn to develop perspective taking. You learn to develop priorities in life. You learn to develop independence. You see yourself as someone who's overcome something, who can handle something, who knows what's what, right? And that's what I want for my kids. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments if that is making sense to you, or maybe you feel like, no, that's fine. Give me your pushback. I'm happy to develop a debate. Okay, Isabel says, hi, Isabel. I found you 2 days ago. Welcome. And I love your content. It's completely in line with my beliefs. Do you think the gentle parenting is a trend that is growing stronger or gets less and less popular? So, Isabel, it's so interesting. I think in a way, I see it weakening a little bit. You know, I don't know. I don't have research to back this up. Like, it's anecdotal. But what I see is kind of the same trajectory that I went on, which is, you know, being quite mesmerized, quite in love with this romanticized, nostalgic idea of just gentle parenting, of everything being very frolicking and very soft, right? And then a kind of getting mugged by reality moment where you suddenly see, wait, but I have to raise real kids in the real world, and they do need more boundaries or more follow through or more consequences. Now, I still love gentle parenting because I don't want to be authoritarian. I lean towards yelling and punishing and getting angry and getting very controlling. That's something that can come out of me quite easily, and I want to rein that in. And so I do want to lean myself more towards the soft, supportive side. But the thing is that we must not lose the high expectations. We must not lose the high standards. We must not somehow soften so much that we're not helping our child to, you know, to overcome, to become resilient, to have life skills, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, in general, I think it's becoming a little bit less popular. And certainly in the United States, where everything is tainted very political, right? You see these big waves, like we saw this big wave of wokeism in 2021 and 22, et cetera. And now there's been this big red wave. And those political movements have a lot of kind of parenting trends that get embedded in them. And they change the zeitgeist. They change what's the norm. They change what we're seeing, you know, on TV or in Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes you see these kind of very polarized swings from one end to another. And I think it's not great for us. It's not great for us to be swung by politics or to be swung by trends or to be swung by technology like TikTok or to be swung by culture. In fact, I believe that culture needs to be downstream from parenting. They say that politics is downstream from culture, and I think culture is downstream from parenting. I think you and I are actually the ones creating and forming the future. We need to get really clear on our values and make that the norm, right? Raise children in an authoritative, warm leadership with an incredible family culture that's based on vision and on values, and then let that trickle down and influence culture and then influence politics. Does that make sense, Isabel? Let me know what you think of what I just said. That was a lot. Okay. Prativa says, I asked you a question about my 6-year-old and bedwetting in a previous chat. I would like to answer and experience on that. We do love what you do. Thank you, Avital. Prativa, thank you so much. I believe that you are on my list here somewhere, and I will absolutely get to it. But if I haven't, let's just do it right now. Okay, 6-year-old bedwetting. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that it's still within the norm of childhood development. So usually what I've seen from the research is that at the tail end of 7-year-old is when you want to start to ask, is this still normal? Okay. And I do have personal experience with this, and I do want to encourage you very much that children will grow out of it. They can grow out of it. Most children, unless there's some kind of physical reason, maybe psychological reason, are going to grow out of bedwetting. Okay, so in the interim, what can you do? You can minimize liquid intake at the second half of the day. So front load drinking, right? Drink a lot in the morning and then don't drink a lot about 3 hours before bedtime, maybe not at all, right? To really help them. Go to the toilet one more time before bed. It's a good idea to empower your child with a mindset of, I can stay dry throughout the night, right? Kind of not focusing on, oh, this is so annoying, this is so disgusting, this is so smelly. Aren't you embarrassed? Don't you want to be a big kid already? Because it's very much uh, almost out of their control, right? There's a little part of the mindset that's there that is in their control, I think, but it's almost out of their control, especially because it's happening in a totally unconscious way, right? When they're literally knocked out and asleep. So lay off the shaming and the guilting. Lay off all the negativity, but empower them. Be like, you know what? I think you're really ready to start to be dry throughout the night. We're going to stop drinking before bed. That will help you. You're going to drain your body of all the fluids before you go to sleep. And then I want you to just say to yourself, I can stay dry. My body can wake me up if I need the toilet, but not like to pile on a lot of stress or drama around it, because chances are in a year or two, you won't have this problem anymore. So in the interim, make the bed, easy to switch, easy to wash. I know it's a pain. I know it's annoying. I know it's a drain on your time. I know it's not pleasant, but I do want to just say that I think it is within the norm. Okay. Prativa, does that make sense? And does that answer your question? Okay, Honeydew, hello. I'm someone who is opposite, where I lean more permissive naturally. I appreciate your perspective because most advice is not helpful to me because it encourages this in me. Right. And to be honest, most of my advice to my clients is for people like you, because most of my clients and most people, I think, in today's culture lean permissive. So I'm actually not speaking to myself because I lean authoritarian and I try to become a little bit softer and a little bit calmer and a little bit more gentle. But most of my students come to me with this sense that they have trouble with leadership, with firmness, with setting boundaries, with following through, with establishing consequences, with being in a position of authority, right? They feel like, I don't have the confidence. I don't have the clarity. I'm not even sure what I believe. I'm not even sure what the rules should be. I don't know what is developmentally appropriate to expect of my child, right? I don't know how to hold expectations. So most people that I speak to are in your boat. And I'm so glad that this is helpful to you and does encourage you in the right direction. Honeydew, do you have any questions for me? I'm more than happy to answer them. And I hope you join the studio where I can continue to encourage you even more. All right, next question I have here is from HR 5106. And she writes, hi, what should I do if it seems like no consequences seem to work for my children? Also, what should I do if kids see the consequences as a joke? Okay. Consequences, I think, work best when they are logical, when they make sense. Okay. So not punishments. Okay. Not punishments, but more just really logical consequences. Like if you are disrespectful, or if you waste a lot of time being wild, or if you don't follow through and finish the chores on time, then we're not going to go and do the things that you love to do. We're not going to be able to put on the movie or go to the playground, or we'll have less time for books, right? It just needs to be logical. And I think that your child might be seeing it as a joke because you don't feel kind of calm, secure, confident in what you're saying. Like, hey, I'm just laying out the facts. This is just how it works. Okay. And I want you to adopt a more no nonsense, pragmatic, unruffled, like, buddy, you didn't do it before. So now the consequence is XYZ, right? Like you kept looking at the phone when I told you there was no screen time now. So now the phone is away for 2 days. It's just, sorry, not me. That's just the rules, right? We kind of have just this feeling of like, that's just what's going to happen. I know it sucks. It sucks for you. It sucks for me. It's not what anyone wanted, but you made a choice and now we have to live with the consequences of it, right? You were throwing the blocks across the room and putting them away. And you can think that's a joke all day, every day, but it's just what I'm going to do. Like, it's just what's going to happen. I don't need to appease you. I don't need to make it serious for you. I don't need to put on my serious face and start yelling. It's just matter of fact what happens, right? It's just the facts. It's just what you see in front of you. So logical consequences are more about just follow through than they are about being taken seriously or yelling or establishing authority through, firmness and being. No, it's just, well, I'm sorry. I asked you to clean your room this morning. You didn't do it. Now you're asking me for a sleepover with friends. The answer has to be no, because we'll need that time for cleaning your room. You should have done it when I asked you. Sorry, darling. I know that sucks. Next time I know that you'll do it promptly, right? That's the energy. Okay. And it's not fair. I want the sleepover. You said I could. No, sweetie. I said you could, but obviously that's contingent on you upholding your side of the bargain, which you haven't done, so it's going to be a no today. Now, the thing is to actually do that, to actually not have the sleepover or not do the screen time or, not help them with their homework because they, didn't come to you in time or whatever. Like, you actually have to follow through so that they feel, oh, mom has some integrity. Mom means what she says. There are negative consequences when I make negative choices. It's not a good idea for me to yell or scream or hit my sibling or cry about screens. It's not going to work, right? That's something that they have to see is not effective and doesn't work and isn't a good idea. Okay. Okay. Isabel, hello. You say, never thought of parenting styles in the light of political wins. Very interesting. I live in Sweden and the woke era has been going on for ages here, and it definitely had an effect now that I see it. Right. It does have an effect, right? Because, say, in wokeism, there's a huge emphasis on victim mindset, right? Everybody has to see themselves as oppressed. Everybody has to be classified into minorities and into minority groups and talk and reinforce and be identified with a victim story. And unfortunately, that is something that seeped into our homes as well, where we're seeing our children as if they are oppressed simply because they have less power. Right? One of the ideas of the woke philosophy and the woke ideology is that everything is about power. Right. And I don't think that's true at all. I think many people who do have a lot of power have very good intentions, want to mentor others, want to improve the world, want to use, all sorts of forms of influence that aren't just hard power. Right. But we then tend to see ourselves as parents as tyrannical and oppressive just because we have power. If you have it drummed into you that anyone who's in a position of power and authority is an oppressor, and anyone who isn't is oppressed, you are going to inadvertently and subconsciously see your child as oppressed and see yourself as an oppressor. And you're going to feel very bad and guilty and uncomfortable whenever you set boundaries and follow through. And the difference that I'm trying to put forward is that there is such a thing as a benevolent authority. There is such a thing as good authority. There is such a thing as positive, inspiring leadership that we all need and want and crave, especially children, right? It's not oppressive. It's mentoring. It's helpful. It's leadership. It's inspiring. Okay, that's one example. Another thing that wokeism believes in is the victim mindset, right? That you should always look for the microaggression. You need a safe space to protect you from anything that might hurt your feelings, right? Those ideas fragilize people. They make people feel like I can't overcome things. Everyone's out to get me. I'm defined by the way I look or by the way I was born or by my sexual orientation. I can't relate to other people or other people can't relate to me. I'm being somehow, oppressed and hunted down. And those types of ideas also seep into our parenting, right? Where we suddenly, one thing, for example, is a lot of parents today, a lot of moms today especially, nurture a victim story. Parenting is so hard. The mental load is so heavy. We're so under-resourced. We're not seen. I'm invisible. My labor is invisible. My labor is unpaid. I'm not salaried. I'm taken for granted. Those are victimhood stories. Those are stories that are designed to put us in a position of disempowerment, of feeling like, I deserve more, the same for, overemphasis on stories about like the battles of the sexes, right? Oh, moms have it so much harder than dads. It's so unfair. People actually speak like this. There's a big fight against biology and wokeism as well, right? Like, the differences between the sexes or any kind of biology, even the differences between the species is something that is not acceptable in wokeism, right? Just how you're born. So, for example, you'll often see moms feel like it's so unfair that I have to carry the babies. It's so unfair that I have to nurse the babies, right? That seeps into our psyches and we feel like, oh, it is unfair. Why am I put in this position, right? But that's a story of disempowerment. That's a story that doesn't own that, yep, we all come into this earth with pros and cons to how our bodies work and might as well make friends with ourselves, might as well enjoy life in our body, might as well feel empowered and solutions oriented and not fight against just basic reality and basic biology. So yeah, all of those things might as well own our choices, right? We live in a world, especially if you're in Sweden, you live in a world where there is absolutely, equality of opportunity. And then people have to make their own choices, right? People have to decide, am I going to stay home with my baby? Am I going to go to work? Am I right? Etc. So owning our choices, feeling good about our choices. These are all the types of mindsets that either trickle down negatively from political, movements or positively. And I'm, like a soul fighter on the mountain against these winds of disempowerment, because I think parents need to feel, strong, capable, happy in their role, grateful for what they've got, those types of things. Okay. Aiza says, what is the logical consequence for treating the sibling harshly? The logical consequence when you're treating a sibling harshly is that you don't get to play with them. If you can't treat people with respect, you can't be in the same room with them right now. I'm sorry, I can't trust you because I see that you're hitting. I see that you're hurting. I see that you're throwing things. You're not being respectful. You can go and play by yourself. You lose your playmate if you treat your playmate badly. Does that make sense, Aiza? And then it's like, well, I would love for you to come back and play with them. I'm sure you can offer them to play with them again, but you're going to have to be, kind and gentle and respectful, right? Isa says they hardly play together. They are 12 and 8. Okay. And that's okay. And that's also normal. And that's fine. I would love for them to play more together, but it can't be harshly, right? The logical consequence is take a break, calm down, apologize for how you behaved, make amends, and then try again. Does that answer your question? We can also talk about how to encourage them to play more together. And what I would say there is by creating a family culture of togetherness, right? Like for example, in my family on Fridays is our screen time day because we go into Sabbath. So before we start Sabbath and we put all the screens away, we have about an hour and a half or 2 hours of screens. But before we can do that, we have to finish all our chores. We have to fold the laundry. We have to wash the floor. We have to wash the dishes. We have to tidy up bedrooms, whatever. And so there's this spirit of togetherness. Like, hey, we're all in this together. We all have to get this all done in order to unlock our screen times. Let's make sure that we work as a team, right? So that's one thing that can connect and create a sense of togetherness. Or we can create togetherness by having joint experiences, going on travel, on adventure together, hiking together, playing games together. Inside the studio, we have a campfire project where you gather around the campfire, you sing songs together, you can roast marshmallows. You can have a meal plan where we cook together and we sit around the table together and have meaningful Socratic debates or meaningful conversations about values together. We want to build togetherness. And then you also want to actually build play together for older children. Okay. So for example, a 12-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl could learn to play card games together, could learn to really enjoy chess or enjoy all manner of, two-person games with cards or with a board game or with a ball, right? That type of thing. And those are the types of things that you might need to support them and help them a little bit with. And then they can, be off to the races and carry on together. It could also be a joint project, like, oh, we're going to build a tree house. We're going to, train a dog. We're going to whatever, right? Do a lemonade stand, something entrepreneurial, something like helping neighbors and volunteering. Those are the types of things they could work on together as a team. How does that sound? Mary says, hi, Avital. How do you answer your kids' questions about how other kids being disrespectful and parents being overly permissive? They feel we are so unfair because we have rules. Well, I just answer that very honestly. Every family has different rules. Those parents think that that's what's fair for their kids. That's fine. I don't think so. I disagree. Here's what we do in our family. Right. And it's just like we might have different religious beliefs or different political persuasions or different lifestyles or different food choices or different rules about screens and rules about sugar and rules about bedtime. And I just say honestly to my children, look, from what I know, getting to bed on time is really important for your brain development, for you to grow taller, stronger, healthier, faster. And so bedtime is really important to us. And I know that our neighbors let their kids stay up till 11 p.m. Good for them. That's their choice. I disagree with it. I don't think it's the best thing for their kids. But that's not my home. That's not my jurisdiction. That's not my choices. So life isn't fair. And there is actually a cognitive fallacy called the fairness fallacy, where you constantly think everything has to be fair. Everyone has to be the same. No, they don't. Each parent decides in their own home what is appropriate, what they want to do, what they allow. And kids just have to suck that up and deal with that because that's just the fact. So they feel that we are so unfair because we have rules. Okay, they can feel that. You can tell them that your rules are there for reasons. These are the things that you believe. This is the research that you've read. This is your experience with them or with life or with your own growing up or whatever. And you are not going to apologize to them for that, right? It's like, sorry, not sorry. Like, we're your parents. We decide. And I'm sure there are many things that you offer your children that they like that other families don't have. So you can say, you win some, you lose some. You get some things that you like from our parenting, but we're a package deal. We have rules and we have lots of privileges as well. And this is how we're running it, Does that make sense, Mari? Mari also says, and on the topic of victim mentality, how do we deal with bullying at school? Cheers from Paige in Romania. We were in Romania recently. We had a wonderful time. And it was really lots of fun. We saw a lot of bears. It was very cool. Sorry, so I've been calling you Mari, but your name is Paige. Hello, Paige. Look, if you're talking about actual bullying, you need to intervene with that, right? We can't just let a kid continue to be bullied at school. And one of the things that helps with bullying is to address it head on, right? To turn to that child and say, you're being a bully. I won't be bullied and intimidated by you, right? And that can be something that the parents help. That can be something that you empower your child to do, right? Giving them a script, right? Giving them a way to stand up to it, because usually bullies prey on victims that fold, victims that keep taking it, victims that are not going to stand up for themselves or have anyone stand up for them. And so I think if it's real bullying, you need to stand up to the bully. You need to say, I'm not scared of you. You're just a bully. I won't let you talk to me that way, and even teaching a child, if a kid is, God forbid, hitting them, to protect themselves, to hit back, to use martial arts, right? That kind of thing. Self-defense. I think self-defense is really, really important. You don't want to teach your child not to hit under any circumstances. I think when it's a sibling, it's different, right? Because a sibling kind of needs to live together. And often they're just agitating each other. But when there's a bully and a victim, right? When it's really that dynamic of oppressed and oppressor, right? Which is rare, but it happens, then the child needs to stand up for themselves and fight back. And that's why I'm a big believer in martial arts, in bumping up children's confidence, in even giving them skills to physically defend themselves so that they feel that they can. They're less likely to get bullied if they can kind of hold themselves up high, etc. Paige says, unfortunately, the school and the psychologist won't accept which fact? The fact that there is bullying, or the fact that children need to stand up for themselves? Tell me what you mean by that. Maybe give me a little bit more color to the situation so I can be a bit more specific for you, Paige. I really want to give you a helpful answer. But I do want to say that we sometimes, and this might not be you, Paige, it really might not be you, but sometimes in modern day culture, we use terms like bullying to mean teasing, or to mean, not including or rejecting or saying a mean word, right? And those types of things, that kind of softer version of, oh, kids will be kids get gossipy, kids get cliquey, kids are sometimes mean to each other. There, I would actually coach my child to develop a thicker skin. To be like, you know what? People don't always have to like you. People don't always have to play with you. It's okay. You can walk away. You can make your own game. Sometimes that changes because friendships and relationships really evolve and change over the years, and kids grow and mature. Like my daughter, for example, she says that a lot of girls in her class say, oh, I don't want to play with you because you're not pretty, right? And I just kind of brush that off with her. And I say, sweetie, kids say the darndest things. Kids sometimes decide, oh, it's only pretty to have black hair. It's only pretty to have blonde hair. They say you're not pretty because they're actually jealous because you are pretty. We don't know. We don't know what they mean by that. And anyway, it's a silly thing to say because we don't choose friends, or we shouldn't choose friends based on what they look like, right? But rather based on their character. And anyway, it's a silly thing because, of course, you're gorgeous. You know you're gorgeous. I know you're gorgeous. So we're not going to put much weight into what they're saying. But it doesn't feel good. I know. Let's talk about what you can do, right? Well, the first thing you can do is never do that to someone else, right? When someone has done unkind things to you, you learn not to behave that way. It hurts people. It's not a good idea. It's not healthy, right? That's the first thing. The second thing you can do is you can be proactive about your situation. How about you go and be friends with that person over there who's not talking to you like that? How about you make up your own game? How about you say a joke like, I know, I'm just an ogre. I'm the ugliest thing ever, right? And brush it off and laugh it off. There are many ways that you can handle it that are empowering rather than disempowering, rather than shrinking and crying and getting hurt, right? Which is okay, but it's not something that I want for you, right? Paige says, the school won't accept the fact that it really happens. Physical contact and belittling in class. My child keeps reliving what has happened, almost like she's looking for me to join in the story. Okay. Look, you really do want buy-in from the school because that would be so much more helpful, of course. And this is why I have a lot to say about schools. It's tough. Schools are tough. But Here's what I would say. First of all, you need to help your daughter to make sense of what's happened to her. One of the most protective mental health things that we can do to help children not be traumatized by things is to tell us what's happened chronologically. Okay, give you an example from something extreme just to make the point. Okay, when soldiers go into war and they experience very stressful, very traumatic things, one of the things that that parents are instructed to do to help them is not to probe about their feelings about it. Okay, so for example, they come home from war. Parents are not supposed to be like, how did you feel? And were you so scared? And were you so worried? Right? No, they're not supposed to do that. What they're supposed to do is say, and then what happened? And then what did you do? And then what did you do? And allow the soldier to make chronological sense of what they've just been through. Because feelings are chaotic and immersive and overwhelming and scarring, and they make us disempowered. And oh my God, of course he feels scared. Like, stupid question. Of course he felt that, right? But when we can make sense of what we've been through, and then I did this, and then I did that, we position ourselves not as a victim, but rather as a hero. Someone who is capable, someone who is empowered, someone who can take action, someone who can do certain things. Okay. So, Paige, when she's reliving what happened, that's okay. Relive it with her. Ask her to make sense, not of how she felt. Don't talk about emotional language. We talk about emotional language way too much in parenting today, and it's damaging to our children to constantly linger on emotions and to empower emotion. That makes them emotionally volatile, emotionally weak. It makes them think that what they feel is the only important thing, and it's not. What they think and what they do is much more important to their quality of life and to the robustness of their character and their value system. And so talk about what she thinks and what she does. And then what do you do? Okay, so the bully belittles you in class. Okay. Oh, so first of all, let's not frame them as a bully. Let's just say, oh, that sounds like a kid that's having a really hard time. That sounds like a kid who doesn't know how to be kind. That sounds like a kid who really hasn't developed good social skills. It sounds like a lot is going off in this kid's life, and I'm really sorry to hear it. But that doesn't excuse that this kid is taking it out on you. It's really sad that they're seeing you and they're thinking, well, I feel weak and small and scared, so I'm going to make someone else feel weak and small and scared to make me feel bigger. That's sad. But let's talk about what they do. So they belittle you. They say, oh, you're so dumb and stupid. You don't have any friends. I don't know, whatever the bully says, right? And she's able to tell you that story, right? And then you're able to say, okay, and then what did you do, right? Then you say there's physical contact. Oh, she pushed you in the playground. Okay. She came up to you and she pushed you and you fell on the floor. You fell on the floor and it scraped your knee. And then she ran off and laughed. And then what did you do? You got up. Okay. And you brushed off your knee. You brushed it off and you went to tell a teacher. Okay. And then you washed your knee and put a Band-Aid on. Right. And then you went back out and you played on the other side of the playground to avoid her. Okay. So you could do something about it. You could help yourself. You could get the medical care you needed. You could avoid her. You could run away. You could find an adult, right? Like, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that we want to show her that there are actions she can take. There are steps that she can take. She's empowered. She's not just a victim. There are things she can do. She can talk about it. She can put language to it. There are people she can seek for help. There are other friends she can play with. And I would also empower her with a few tools of what to do to or say to the bully. Okay. So maybe you want to take her to a couple of martial arts lessons, maybe private lessons, right? Maybe a private lesson saying, hey, I want you to tell the judo teacher exactly what she does to you. Now, Paige, I'm kind of saying all of this in two minds, because part of me is sad that you don't have the support of the school to do this with you, because the school psychologist and the teacher should absolutely be there to help you with this. But part of me is like, okay, let's deal with reality. That sometimes happens. For whatever reason, she has to be in the school. She has to deal with this bully. No one else is believing her. You are believing her. You are going to help her. So you go to a private lesson or you watch some YouTube videos on martial arts or whatever, and you give her the skill to say, don't touch me. Okay. And she yells that to the mirror and she practices it. Okay. Don't touch me. Right. I don't know if this is exactly the right thing to say, right? But let's kind of craft it and figure it out together to give her a couple of, or just one, really clear, direct, confident ways of showing the bully that she will not be messed around with. Paige, how does all of that sound? Is that helpful to you? I know this is a very painful subject. I'm sure it's very stressful to even talk about it, but I do want to give you some practical advice. While you're answering me, let's answer Hannah, who says, Thanks to you, my son started with martial arts 4 months ago and is very happy about it. He's built up confidence already. Amazing. I'm such a fan of martial arts. I think it's so great for kids. Okay. And for adults. Isa says, every sentence is oozing clarity. God bless you. I'm so happy. That is such a big compliment. Thank you. Clarity is what I want to give to you. In a world of doubts and confusion and fog, let's clear all the blur away and get really clear so that we can have confidence and conviction. That is what we need as parents, because honestly, that's what our children need from us, you know? Okay. Isa says, what to do if a 7-year-old throws extreme temper tantrums? She hits, bites, and screams at mom. Things like, I want to kill you. It's mostly for very trivial things like going home or not getting a toy. Okay. What she needs is to be put in a timeout, basically, in plain English. That's how I would say it. Is as soon as you start being violent and aggressive, you can't be with other people. I certainly won't let you be with me when you're like that. Okay. So this is a time when you need to sit in the car by yourself. I'll stand right outside the car. I'll keep you safe. You know, if you said like something like going home or not getting a toy, right? At home, you're going to go to your room, or you're going to go to my room, or I'm going to go to my room, or whatever, but we're going to separate until you're calm. Now, I like the idea of time-ins, right? Where you sit with the child so that they feel supported and they feel that you can calm them down. But if a 7-year-old is being like violent, it's going to be very hard for you to stay calm and not get triggered and not be violent back to her, right? You're going to have a really hard time, I imagine, keeping your cool and just breathing through it. And so instead of suggesting that you do that, which I think is unrealistic, I would suggest a timeout. You don't need much words. You don't need, explanations. Just, oh, you're triggered. You go to your room. Okay. And they absolutely need to just wait it out. And here's why. Being furious and having a temper tantrum is a bit like being drunk. Okay. You're not yourself. You're going to do and say things that you regret later. You're going to be completely out of control. And that's why we have limitations on drunk people. Drunk people cannot drive cars. Drunk people should not sign contracts. They cannot operate heavy machinery. They should not be texting their exes when they're drunk. It's just not a good idea. But like drunk people, it wears off. It passes. Okay. So we need to wait for it to pass for her prefrontal cortex to come back online so that we can discuss things in a reasonable manner and she can be a civilized individual again. Okay. She needs to see that as soon as she goes into a fit, everything she wanted doesn't work anymore. She does not get rewarded for that behavior. In fact, it's really destructive to her own incentives and goals. It doesn't work. So you need to de-link any kind of reward, any kind of satisfaction from behavior that is destructive. Instead, she needs to see, oh, I just get sent to my room. I'm just not allowed what I want because I'm violent, because I'm aggressive. Do not let her bite you, throw things at you, hit. Do not. She cannot continue to build those neuronal pathways because neurons that fire together wire together. So she's firing the neuron of I'm frustrated, I didn't get what I want. And she's wiring it together with I'll scream and hit and bite. No, we need to separate those neurons. It needs to now become I didn't get what I want. I take a deep breath and I say, oh, I'm frustrated and disappointed, right? We need to train her in that. Now, there are things you can do before the tantrum happens, right? You see a buildup, you see that she's getting agitated, and you can say, honey, you can see that you're getting in a mindset that's not helping you very much. I want to help you to think of things in a more positive manner. And that is something I teach inside the studio. Make sure to join today because doors close tomorrow. Okay. So that's at highfam.com/studio. Go there, join right now. It's risk-free. You have nothing to lose, and you will get all the support that you need to coach this exact type of thing, these exact mindsets. Okay. But saying things like, I want to kill you is something that you want to coach a 7-year-old to stop saying. Okay. So you can say, I can see that you're really frustrated. You're really upset. That's not a way to talk to anyone. Those words are not acceptable in our family. And in fact, because you let those words out of your mouth, we're not going to do the movie today, or we're not going to get the toy. When you can ask politely for things and stay calm and handle your frustrations, that's when you're going to get more of what you want. I said, does that answer your question? Let me know. I would love to hear. Morta says, my 8-year-old daughter lied to her best friend for over a year, saying she was a vegetarian like her friend. Should I ask her to say the truth? It worries me that she might have trouble with peer pressure. In other words, she lied to her friend, telling her that she's vegetarian, even though she's not, right? Okay, so what I would say to an 8-year-old in this situation is, honey, I know you were telling Jenny that you're vegetarian, and we know that you're not, right? You had hot dogs last night. Darling, I know you were trying to be her friend because she's vegetarian and you thought you need to be like her. But lying is wrong. And it means that your friend won't trust you and won't believe you in the future, even about things that are true. Like even when you tell her that you have, a skip rope competition, or that you have Barbies at home, she might not believe you anymore because now she knows you're a liar, right? So I need you to know that it's much more important to tell the truth. That's how we make friends, is when they get to know who we really are and they like us for who we really are. And she can like you and enjoy your company, even though you're not vegetarian like her. Okay. So next time you see her, you can tell her, you know what? I'm actually not vegetarian. I don't know why I was saying that all this time. I'm not vegetarian. We do eat meat at home. Not sure why I said that, or something along those lines, right? Or she could write her a little letter. She doesn't need to make a whole big drama about it. She's 8 years old. It doesn't need to be like this traumatic experience, like, oh my God, I have to come out as a big liar. But you do need to teach her about reputation destruction, about how we need to maintain our reputation and be trustworthy individuals, and that she does need to learn to tell the truth and not cave to peer pressure. So yes, you're right to be a little bit concerned about that, and to learn, or to teach her to learn, to be honest about who she is, and to learn that not everybody's going to like you. That's okay. People who don't like you for who you really are, maybe they're not the right friends for you. Like if someone doesn't want to be your friend because you're not vegetarian, maybe they're not the right friend for you. They need to accept your lifestyle and your way of life. Morta, does that make sense? And does that answer your question? Let me know in the comments. Caroline says, my 6-year-old is very impulsive and talkative and loves to ask questions. A lot of the time, he will be abrupt and disturb. At home, we make sure that he makes space for his siblings, but at school, they don't have the same resources, so they end up yelling and threatening him with unfair consequences. No, unfair to me. How do I handle this? Do I handle it? Okay. So the trouble that I have with answering this question is that school, first of all, school is a massive umbrella term that means lots of different types of institutions, right? I have no idea what type of school he's in. I have no idea, how aware, how sensitive, how well informed, how well trained, how well resourced they are. And so school could be this incredible place, and school could be, just all about classroom management and violent management and that kind of thing. And that's a little bit of the trouble, is that school is kind of a lowering to the most, the lowest common denominator. It's about classroom management. Most teachers are under-resourced. Most teachers do not have time, patience, awareness, ability to, help and empower and coach children to do well in their classroom. And so they just kind of use the bluntest tools that they have, which is things like punishments and consequences, threatening or yelling, like you're saying. So you can handle it in one of two ways. You can decide if the school is for him, if you're keeping him in that school, right? And you may not have much choice in the matter, because I know that some areas have laws about schools and some parents don't have other options. So I just bring it up because sometimes if a school is a mismatch, if a school is discouraging a kid, right, disenfranchising them, and making them feel like their personality is a problem, then sometimes parents do pull their kids out and do find alternative schooling opportunities. I've pulled my kids out, many, many times. Like, oh, this isn't working. But I know that that's a privilege that I have that not everybody has. So I just say that really, carefully, because I know it's not for everyone. If you're like, no, he needs to stay in the school for whatever reason, because of family reasons, financial reasons, academic reasons, or whatever, and you can't work with the teachers, you can't talk with them and say, okay, I find that he is constantly being berated for, being bubbly, or, here's a system that I think might work because a professional suggested it to us. So maybe you'll consider getting on board with us. Like, if there's no one to work with, sometimes there's a teacher who wants to work with you. Sometimes the teacher's curious and open. Sometimes teachers are like, I have one of the schools my kids go to. I go to the teachers for parenting advice. I hold them in such high regard. I think they're such amazing educators that I go to them and I'm like, help me with this behavior problem. What do you think? I really respect them. And sometimes I'm like trying to shield my child from a bad teacher, or what I perceive as not a very skilled teacher, right? Like, oh, they're saying things that are damaging and unhelpful and, disenfranchising. And so there's a wide range of experiences. But if you can't work with the teacher and they're not helpful in that regard, and you can't pull the child out of the school, then you're going to have to bolster up the child's mindset to handle that, right? And then there comes in the piece of resilience of like, look, it's not an easy environment for you to be in. They're going to continue to, not allow you to be talkative or to be impulsive because that disrupts the classroom. And you're going to have to learn to get on the page with them, right? You're going to have to learn to zip your mouth, to sit on your hands, and not to be disruptive. And there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for learning to adapt to an environment to an extent. I think sometimes the expectations are just counter childhood, right? For a child, a 6-year-old, especially a 6-year-old boy, to sit down and listen to frontal, boring lectures for, 6 to 8 hours a day is not very realistic and is not in tune and is not aligned with childhood development, with what kids really need to be doing, which is moving their bodies, which is social skills and burning, which is and building a lot of play, all sorts of things that they need, which aren't just textbooks, right? But again, I don't know what kind of school he's in. Maybe he's in a forest school. Maybe he's outdoors all day, but he's still being impulsive and disruptive. So maybe you say to yourself, no, this is what he needs. The teachers should come down on him, like a ton of bricks and help shape him and help him learn to set boundaries and to rein in his more impulsive behaviors. In other words, I don't have one clear answer for you because it very much depends on the situation. It depends on how bad it is in the school. It depends on what your options are. It depends on whether you think, well, you know what? This is something my child can and should learn. It's not a bad experience for him. At home, he gets a lot of freedom. He's not there that many hours. Their expectations aren't that high. Like, what's the big deal to be quiet a little bit? Okay. So those are the types of things that you need to ask yourself to get really granular. By the way, inside of the studio, I have a whole bonus section. And in the bonus section, there are things like how to set boundaries, how to follow through on consequences or on anything, how to handle any emotion in my child. And one of them is how to make any decision. And there I help you with these kind of debates that we all have to have, these choices that we all have to have. Thank God we live in a world of, of options and of choices. I don't take that for granted. I'm very grateful for that. I know many people around the world have no choices. But the hard thing about choices is making them, right? Is weighing up our options and deciding, wait, should I keep them in the school? Should I handle it? Should I teach him to handle it? Should I pressure the teachers to handle it differently? Should I get involved? Should I not get involved? Making these decisions can drain us of our energy as parents. It's not so easy. And that's the kind of thing I can really, really help you with inside of the studio. As I've already said, we are closing tomorrow, so make sure you go on over there right now. You can press pause on this or come back to this, but join because I want you to grab your spot. I don't want you to let this opportunity slide. I want you to be able to make any decision, to handle any emotion, to follow through on consequences, to build teamwork and togetherness and bonding and family habits that create an incredible family culture and feel confident in your parenting. All of that stuff is stuff I can really help you inside of the studio. So Caroline, how do I handle this and do I handle it? Depends on, I would need more information, but I hope I've given you some of the guidelines of how to think about it. And then how do you handle it is also to bolster him up, right? To be like, sweetie, at home, you want to talk a lot. You want to tell me things. You want to suddenly say, let's go outside or let's jump on the couch. Okay, at home, we can handle that. But in school, there are rules. And in school, they need you to rein that in. They need you to be more quiet. They need you to be more respectful. The teacher has 20 other children or 30 other children, and she needs to make sure that you know how to behave. So I want to help you and encourage you to be more to be more respectful, to be calmer. And yeah, if you don't, they'll send you out of the classroom or they'll send you to the principal's office or I don't know what they do, what the consequences are, but, and I don't want you to keep feeling like you're getting in trouble or you're getting in mischief. I want you to be able to succeed in school. Isa says, what kind of schooling system do you encourage? In the era of AI around the corner, how relevant are writing skills, rigorous testing exams? How much pressure should be put on kids regarding that for an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old? Okay, so that's a really in-depth and fantastic question. I have two in-depth videos about the AI era coming around the corner. One was where I interviewed my brother, who is a world-class expert in AI, and he's a fascinating guy and one of my role models, and I strongly encourage you to go and listen to it. It's on my podcast and on my YouTube, so if you just want to listen in your ear, go ahead. The other is where I offer you 10 ways of preparing a child for a future of AI. So I'm not going to give you all of that information here because I've already made those videos, and I recommend that you go and watch them. I think that rigorous skills not testing per se, but learning rigor, right? Learning to sit and do boring things, learning to be tested and to withstand pressures and to study for exams, learning skills, even though they seem outdated, like handwriting, have value. They have value not necessarily because of the skills themselves, like handwriting, although I absolutely think that it's still important to be able to write someone a note or a card or a letter. But because there is value to learning to overcome boredom, to overcome challenge, to deal with difficult problems, to, crack your head open on a math problem. Those are the types of things that actually teach you to think, and they teach you to focus, and they teach you to follow through, and they teach you to try again. And I don't think that even in a world of AI, maybe especially in a world of AI, that learning is defunct or not important or outdated. I think a lot of our learning is going to be immersive and experiential and instant gratification, but we all still need something about something approximating rigor. Now, rigor doesn't have to come academically. Rigor can come from hard physical work, right? Getting up every morning to feed the chickens and to milk the cows is also a form of rigor. Following through on building something, like building a treehouse from scratch, can also give you those skills of staying the course, of solving problems, of overcoming. Those are the types of things. It's actually the internal mindsets of capacity, of competence, of can-do attitude, of problem solving that build the mindsets that I'm talking about, like entrepreneurial mindsets, like confidence, like the ability to problem solve, that type of thing. So it's not so much about the pressures on academia per se, but it's about not letting our kids just grow up with instant gratification. Like, well, ChatGPT knows everything, so why should I even learn? Beyond that, I think that there is an exquisite level of satisfaction and fulfillment and actual real meaning to learning. And I think that's very lost in schools, and that's a shame. I've been very lucky to be part of some schools where there's a true and genuine and almost pure love of learning, where it's not just about preparing you for a career, which is becoming more and more complex in a world of AI, but rather preparing you to be a thinking individual, preparing you to be an interesting conversation mate, preparing you to defend your opinions in a public debate or in a conversation with a friend. Learning is about being knowledgeable. It's about not being ignorant. It's about being able to seek and find answers. It's about being able to qualify the quality of information. It's about being a complex grown-up and a good, a good citizen. And so I would put a huge emphasis on rigor. There I would put a huge emphasis on not being an ignoramus, on knowing history, on understanding how not to repeat history, on being able to see different sides of a debate. There are many, many skills that I think are really, really useful in the 21st century, AI or not. And it's not necessarily what's served up in school, right? It depends on the school. Some schools really do that very well, and some schools are just teaching you for the test. And that is not, I think that's a lot less interesting and a lot less helpful today. These are really good and really in-depth questions, but we have been going for an hour and a half, which is so long, and I think we should wrap up. So last question that I'm going to answer here, and then I will come back and answer the rest. But please join the studio, because if I don't answer them in time, the doors are going to close either way tomorrow. So I don't want you to be waiting for that. By the way, do you have any questions about the studio membership? Do you have any questions about the payment plans or about what's inside there? Or do you want to see it? I can show it to you on my phone here. Let me know, because if you're not sure, if you're on the fence, I really want to prioritize your questions to give you the opportunity to ask them, because it's closing. You can also ask me in my Instagram stories. I have a box there for questions, and I will be happy to answer them. I want to make sure to get you all in, because we're doing amazing things inside there. Hannah says, I'm a studio member, started my 5th year. Hi, Hannah, and can only recommend it very much. Thank you. The community is very supportive, and Avital's advice is always helpful. You can see that she loves what she teaches. Hannah, thank you so much. You caught me. I do love what I teach. I do really love my work. Caroline says, thank you for the answer. You have given me a lot to think about. Excellent. Yeah, it needs a little bit more in-depth thinking there, doesn't it? But we can do that. We can piece by piece it together, get clarity. That's what I teach inside the How to Make Any Decision, is to get clarity on the different steps, the different variables, right? If it's financial, social, convenience, all of that stuff, to make a decision about a school or about anything else in your life. Aiza, with the excellent questions today, says, the narrative of school taking away kids' individuality. What do you say about that? I think what you're referring to is the idea that schools were built on the Industrial Revolution and on making kids into little factory workers, right? Kind of flattening everyone into a common curriculum that everybody has, and then ringing bells, just like you do in a factory, for them to move between classes, and dumbing everything down and making everything very boring, and erasing individual expression, etc. Is that what you mean? So I think schools that run like that do kind of dumb kids down, and do definitely reduce intrinsic motivation and intrinsic interest and intrigue and fascination with learning for the sake of learning. And they can do a lot of harm in that regard. But as I've said, I've been very lucky with some incredible schools. I think Acton academies have been incredibly successful. I think Waldorf schools, Montessori schools, a lot of schools that are built on, there are some charter schools in the US that are built on a lot of pragmatic real life skills, for example, or artistic schools, or science schools, or any schools that are, kind of a little bit more either specialized or have better pedagogy than the most, typical common schools that you'll see, can often actually, be sparking curiosity and hard work and work ethic and great social skills. Ultimately, if your kid goes to just a regular Joe Schmo school that is not very encouraging, and that's just, homework, tests, textbooks, dry and boring. Sorry for the loud noise. Then you're going to need to supplement their curiosity and their love of learning at home. You're going to need to see school as, look, they go to school because of the babysitting, because of the basic education like reading and writing, and because of friends. And that's a big reason to go to school, is to have friends. But you want to open them to worldliness, or to knowing world history, or to loving music, or to, cooking, or to all sorts of other things. Those are things that are going to happen at home. Ultimately, I really encourage parents to take full ownership of our leadership role, and to realize that you can send a child to school, but you can never a child's education still falls squarely under your auspices and your authority. And you need to know, what are they getting in school, and then round that out, balance it out, encourage the good parts, counterbalance the bad parts at home. Because it may be that they're being indoctrinated with really bad ideologies. It may be that they're being told false histories. It may be that they are being discouraged and put down and belittled by their teachers. It may be that they are having the love of learning knocked out of them. If those things are happening, you need to reconsider the school, or at the very least, provide a counter to the school at home. Isa, does that answer your question? Let me know. I would love to hear. There's so much more to say on this subject, on every other subject, but we've been going for an hour and almost 40 minutes. So we're going to close up. Please keep your questions coming. I have a box open on Instagram. You are welcome to drop your questions in there. You are welcome to email us at hello@hifam.com. And overall, I just encourage you to join the studio, because if you like these conversations, if you like my answers, the place that they will, they're ending soon. And the place that this will carry on is inside of the studio, where we have office hours, where I go live, where I answer your questions, where I coach you, where I help you, where I encourage you, and where I give you a very wide-ranging library of content, right? Mini courses, bonuses, training sessions, masterclasses, all of that stuff to build a family life of your dreams, family culture you're proud of, raise resilient kids with strong values, even in a very weak culture. Much, much love to you all, and I hope to see you on the inside. hifam.com/studio. Bye.